Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Something in the Wild podcast. I'm Tyler Smith with you as always, and today I am going to be cleaning my rifles for the season. And the reason I'm doing this is because I just went on my last rifle hunt of the season, and I thought, what a better time to reminisce on all the experiences that I had this year whenever I am cleaning my rifles and share it with you guys. I'm going to walk every step of the way from my elk hunt to my mule deer hunt to my whitetail hunts and my whitetail season and everything in between. Okay, so we're going to get right into it here, and I'm also just going to show you how I kind of work through this process. Now, I have all my tools set up that I'm going to be using today, and what I like to do is I like to lay everything out first and then work through it very meticulously, very thoughtfully. What I'll do is I will use these yellow cloths first. I will lather them up with oil, and I'll wipe down the barrel, the outside of the barrel, and just make sure that I get any little patches of rust, try and work them out with the oil. And then once I'm done with that, I'm going to go into the actual barrel itself with a wire brush. I'm going to bust out any debris that might be in there. And then I'm going to go in for my final touch with the smaller patch and the patch holder and really oil the inside of the barrel too. Make sure it's all clean and good to go for storage this winter because I'm not going to need them anymore. So let's get right into it here. And while I'm doing this, I want to start by working through my season my hunting seasons here. So the first gun that we're going to do is we're going to go with the muzzleloader because I used that one first this year, and it's also very dirty. So here, I'll push this one back here and start wiping this down. Now this muzzleloader has seen a lot, been through a lot, and this one's going to be a little bit of a challenge to clean. I do have to go in and tighten up these sights, these open sights a little bit. I'm very hesitant to use Loctite because I'm constantly switching out open sights for a scope because in Colorado, you cannot use a scope on your muzzleloader. You have to use open sights. So that is what I did here. And while we're on the topic of Colorado, let's start by talking about my elk hunt. Now, I know that I've explained to you guys before what happened in my elk hunt, what sort of transpired, but I guess I can go through very briefly just the story of what happened. So it was mid-September during the muzzleloader season. I had drawn a muzzleloader tag in a coveted unit, and it was me, my dad, and my one buddy, Matt, who you guys have seen before. We drove out there straight through, 24 hours one way, which was crazy, but it was a lot of fun, and it's not too bad whenever you got three people. I put the back seats up in my car, and basically just like one of us can sleep while the other two are in the front seat driving and being the passenger. And it actually goes by a lot faster than you would think. Hey, for anyone that's looking to potentially go do that, I would recommend it, honestly. It was a great time, a lot of fun. All right. Having a hard time getting this end piece off, so I'll have to just save that for later. But what I want to talk about, though, is what actually happened during the hunt, and it was really, really cool. So what ended up happening during the hunt is, we got there on Sunday, and we immediately kind of had everything packed and ready to go, right as soon as we got there, we could just jump out, throw our hunting clothes on, and hit the trail for an extended backpacking trip. We probably had like 2 or 3 days of food and water to kind of sustain us, and that's what we did. Is we set off into the woods and started walking, and literally as we started walking, about 20 yards away from the truck, we ran into a giant bull moose, just an absolute giant bull moose. It was crazy. So that was really, really cool. And like it was just like such a good sign. You spend all off season trying to e-scout, look at like good locations and like try and figure out a game plan. And for our first animal that we see being a giant bull moose, I mean, obviously not as good as a giant elk, but still pretty awesome and still pretty exciting to see. Now, after that happened, we continued on our little trek and walked to our first camping site. And that camping site was in this saddle between these two mountains, and there was like kind of a big giant basin on one side and then a basin on the other side, and then there was this saddle right there. So we camped up on the saddle, and that night we walked out to the ridge, let out a couple bugles, and a bunch of coyotes answered. So that wasn't a great sign, but we were still optimistic. Ended up waking up the next morning, couldn't really spot any elk or anything. Saw a ton of cows, and actually did see a coyote like came running right up towards us. That was a cool sighting, but no elk, and we decided to relocate. And during that relocation, we ended up going to a couple different spots, and it was kind of slow. Saw some mule deer, some actually really nice mule deer, and some decent, like a decent amount of cow elk too. But no bulls. We weren't seeing any bulls. Hearing a couple bugles, but nothing crazy. Fast forward, we switch spots again. We go to this really beautiful drainage where it's, all wilderness areas. So you hike back, and we probably hiked back 3 or 4 miles into this wilderness area and did a bunch of off-trail hiking and off-trail, just running around the mountains like crazy. We were going nuts, and it was a great time. My dad may disagree, but hang on one second. I got to grab this. Got to grab one more piece in here. My dad might disagree, but it was a lot of fun. And, we spent that whole entire week just exploring that drainage, saw a bunch of cows, no bulls yet, no bulls or anything. Saw some black bears, some more mule deer, and all of that stuff. And it was really, really fun. Then, fast forward a little bit towards our final day, because, we are driving so far. Our final day when we were out there was Thursday, and that was our final full day. So Thursday comes along, and Sammy had actually predicted that we would see and kill an elk on Thursday. Now, I even explained that to the camera. Hey, like Sammy said, we're gonna kill one today, and her intuition is pretty good. So, so we were just real pumped up. We were real excited, and I ended up sitting over top of this wallow that we had found previously, like a few days prior, and it turned out absolutely perfect. I was sitting there in the morning. Whew, there's a lot of debris in there. I was sitting there in the morning, and I just hear something running down the hill, just like it sounded like a freight train coming through the woods. And lo and behold, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 cow elk come running down this hill, getting chased by this bull. Keep in mind, this is September, so this is right peak rut, and we had not found very much rut activity up until that point. So finding that was absolutely freaking awesome, and they came running down the hill, and unfortunately for me, I was set up with a pine tree at my back. So this thick pine tree in my back, the wallow was in front of me, and then I had a fallen down tree that I was sitting on that was right here. And whenever they were coming down behind me, and it kind of sloped off behind me, so they were they were lower behind me, and the wind was blowing in that direction. So it was blowing like this way, and they were like coming towards my wind. And so basically what I did was I stood up and I tried to move around this pine tree and like try and make a couple steps, but it was so still and so quiet, and the ground was just so crunchy that I couldn't make any sort of move. I moved a couple steps. They heard me. They stopped. I tried to let out a call, just like a little cow call to kind of let them know that I was there and get them a little bit interested, and they did not like that. They immediately just booked it right back where they came from. And that little bull, I mean, it was small. It wasn't a huge bull by any stretch of the imagination, but it was legal, and I would have been happy to have taken it after the week of hunting that we had. We hunted so hard the whole time, and just for it not to pan out in that way specifically, where I had one so close and well within muzzleloader range. I mean, the thing was 40 yards away. It was just right behind a tree, and for it all to come down to my setup and it being a poor setup at that is really, really unfortunate and was very upsetting. But I can't be too mad because we had just an amazing experience and just so much fun. I mean, so much fun. That's some of my favorite stuff to do is just walking around through the woods, and to be able to do that with my dad, with my buddy. Unforgettable experience, and I cannot wait to go back again next year. I think that we're going to be going back again every single year for as long as we can. At least that's the goal. That's the plan. But just a really, really good time with some really good people. So that was my elk hunt. That was my elk hunt for the year, and you see right there, woo, that thing is dirty. So that was my elk hunt. Now let's bring it back to Pennsylvania now, because that is where my season kind of turned after the elk hunt, after we were unsuccessful. I had until the end of October to go back to Colorado to fill my mule deer tag, and that's just what we did. We went back in October, but I'm talking about hunting here in Pennsylvania, whitetail here in Pennsylvania, and my archery season for whitetail, it was all right. I had a lot of sightings, more sightings than I've had ever in my life. I also hunted more than I ever had in my life, but I'm sure that those are not mutually exclusive. But I actually the one spot that I usually go to, it's kind of near the house a little bit, and not too far away, and that spot was money for me for most of the year. I mean, every single time I go out there, I would see a shooter buck. Saw a ton of them during the archery season. Never was able to get one within range, though. It was very, very difficult for me, for some reason, to get them into archery range. I felt like I was always set up in a good spot, yet they would always just be right out of distance. And it might be due in the fact that maybe I wasn't hidden well enough, or maybe I just didn't have the exact right tree picked out. And I'm going to have a whole entire off season to speculate on what exactly went wrong. But that's those were kind of my observations at first, is those were the two things that were the issues. Being set up in the wrong spot, not on the X, or just low visibility, and also not having properly cut shooting lanes, which is going to be a very big off-season task of mine this year, is to really put a lot of effort into cutting shooting lanes, preparing my stand sites, stand locations, and doing all of the off-season work prior to the season. So in the summer, getting out there and enjoying the woods while also preparing myself for the upcoming season. Now, the season took a pretty dramatic turn during the rut. I was hitting it really hard, going basically every day after work to just getting out there as much as possible, and it just slowed down so much. It died out so much, and I think part of it had to do with the increase in hunting pressure. I feel like there were so many people getting out there and hitting the woods that the deer just knew exactly what was going on. They started holing up. Now, I definitely need some more intel from that spot. I definitely need to figure out where those deer go whenever that happens. I couldn't figure it out this year. I tried to do some in-season scouting and stuff like that, but a lot of the times whenever I went out, it would be really, really loud conditions. I mean, we had a huge drought, so there was not a whole lot of water around, and the deer were very, very skittish, very spooky, and you couldn't really walk around without spooking a whole bunch of deer. So it was tough to do any in-season scouting, and I have still yet to fill my buck tag, whenever the rut concluded. So after the rut, that kind of unlocked, I guess, my mule deer hunting story, if you will. So now I can kind of start talking about that. So my mule deer hunting story. So spent the whole early season hunting whitetails, then go out to Colorado again to hunt for mule deer. And man, that was a grind of a hunt. We went out there again, drove out there, but this time it was just me and Matt driving out there. And so we end up driving out there 24 hours out, get set up, and we were on this beautiful mountain. Very warm the first couple days we were there, very dry. We were able to set up camp, do some glassing, didn't find anything at our first spot, ended up moving and spent 6 days in the snow, in the freezing cold. It probably snowed a foot and a half while we were out there. And, we were like 5 miles into the woods whenever it started snowing. So it snowed, just dumping absolute buckets to the point it snowed so much and we were out there for so long that all of my batteries had died. All of my GoPro batteries had died. All my camera batteries, my external battery, my phone battery was dead. Like, we were running low on charge on everything. And, we kind of need that to navigate and also to record, to bring you guys content. So ended up having to go back to the car and only ever really saw does out there. So we only ever saw doe mule deer, no bucks until the 6th day that we were out there. It was the second to last day. So we had that night, one full day, and then one morning hunt that we had left. And that night before the full day, we finally saw our first buck. We saw our first buck, and he was way the hell off, but it was a buck, and we were super excited about it, and we tried to make a move, but it was too far away. We couldn't get over there in time, so ended up just glassing another hillside, and it was fine. Didn't really see much there either, but we were excited to go after that deer in the morning. So in the morning, we go back to where that deer was at. Didn't end up seeing him. Kind of were walking around a little bit. Didn't see anything. Then, since it was our last full day, we're like, well, might as well cover as much ground as possible. So what we did was we just walked. We probably walked 10 miles that day through, foot high snow, up to your knees. And it was brutal conditions to be walking around. But we took a amazing hike, all the way around our hunting area, and ended up that night at our, kind of like a historic glassing location where we could look over this drainage, and eventually spotted a little spike and or it was a forky, I think. We saw this forky and got real close to him and racked off 3 shots. I missed all 3 shots. It was crazy. But that's not the end of the story. Trust me. I thought it was. I was like so upset. I was like, oh my gosh, we just ruined our only opportunity. Well, turns out, I pan a little bit to the left after I get over not shooting that deer, and lo and behold, there's another spike right down the ridge. So we're like, oh, let's go after that one. So walk down after that deer, and we were looking at the spike, and there was a bunch of does around it. And then we looked, I don't know what compelled me to do so, but I looked into the woods, and I just saw a huge rack of just so much antler. Like I saw like a foot-long tine in this brush. And I was like, holy crap, there's a giant in there. So we tried to sneak a little bit closer, and racked off 2 shots and was able to hit him on one. Let him sit the night because we didn't know how good the hit was. It was also really far away. It was really cold too, so no chance of meat spoilage or anything. So we were like, we're just going to give him the night, come back the next morning. Ended up coming back the next morning with our rifles and our packs in that area, and we were kind of still hunting, and ended up having to track that buck, probably 1.5 miles. And ended up finding it, and man, what an amazing deer. It was awesome. Such a cool experience to go out there and harvest such a big mature animal. It was really, really cool. So yeah, those were my out west experiences. Then I came back again with my rifle, went out for some PA deer hunting, and unfortunately still not able to fill my tag. Just having so many issues with my scope being loose. And then my scope was off, and it wasn't shooting accurately, and just all sorts of problems that I was dealing with. I did end up putting Loctite on the scope rings and sighted in as perfectly as I could. But I still have yet to get an opportunity with it all sighting in. So hopefully that happens here soon. Obviously not with the rifle, but it'll be with my bow, if anything. But I think that I might be putting my hunting gear to rest for the time being, just because I've been going out so much and I've been hunting so hard. It's time for rest. It's time to focus my energy elsewhere into fishing and things like that, squirrel hunting and pheasant hunting with the dogs. I mean, those are some of my favorite things to do. And deer hunting's great, don't get me wrong, but also spending time doing those other things that you really enjoy is very, very important. So yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing. That's what the remainder of my season is going to look like. And Christmas is coming up too, so it's going to be a busy time, I'm sure, for everyone. But I'm glad to be able to be talking to you guys. Very thankful that you guys want to listen to this sort of stuff. And yeah, I look forward to talking with you guys this Friday. It's going to be a really good video. It's depicting my last weekend of rifle hunting out in the Pennsylvania big woods of Potter County. And I see some absolutely beautiful, beautiful scenery. So it's really good. Make sure you tune in for that. Make sure to keep it wild, everyone. And check out the YouTube channel if you like stuff like this. This is kind of a little bit different than my usual podcast. Usually I'm talking about some news-related stuff with conservation or hunting news. But today I thought it would be enjoyable to just kind of talk about what happened this season. So thank you guys so much for listening. Really appreciate it. Make sure to check it out. Make sure to keep it wild.